Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inside ArtScroll, where the books you read and the people who write them come to life. Today I am privileged to be joined by Rabbi Joey Haber, renowned speaker and mashpia. Thank you, Rabbi Joey, for being here.
Thank you very much.
It's very exciting to sit and speak to you. I know you have a busy schedule.
I'm looking forward as well.
And you managed to squeeze us into the schedule.
Thank you. It's my honor.
And I really appreciate you coming out to Rahway to schmooze. Really, the truth is, it took a Vayimaen book to get you down here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward because I really, Vayimaen has a very special place in my heart, so I'm excited about the conversation.
I appreciate you coming here. We're going to have a limited amount of time, but really with you, we could go in so many different directions, both about your career, which Baruch Hashem has taken off. You're really speaking in so many places, different audiences. You seem to have a message that resonates with those audiences. So Baruch Hashem, Klal Yisrael is lucky to have such an eloquent voice.
Thank you.
Today we are here to discuss the Vayimaen book, which I'm going to start with this. You are one of the many speakers who have spoken for Vayimaen, and it's a remarkable thing. Even popular speakers like yourselves, you've addressed massive audiences, you speak all the time, and yet the speakers of Vayimaen say that the feedback they've gotten to their clips, however many they've done, some have done one or two, some have done many, they say there's nothing like it. They've never seen anything like that type of feedback. Talk about that.
So to me, it's incredible. When I first got called about this, it was about a year ago now, and they called me up. We have this idea with these videos. I don't even know if I heard about it before or not, and we want to know if we could film you a few videos. I said, okay, fine, no problem. And they came down. Actually, I think the first one I did was specific for Super Bowl Sunday. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, we could talk about avoiding this watching. I said it's delicate because you don't want to endorse watching the Super Bowl because a lot of people are living, I don't know if I'm speaking Ashkenazi, Al-Taris HaKodesh, and they're not watching anything. And you don't want to even hint to the fact that they are. And then there's other people that really are watching the Super Bowl, nothing you can do about it, but you want them to sort of be a little careful about what they see and don't see, the halftime show, the commercials, and have a certain standard. And I said, okay, I'm going to try. And we did a video that day, and I couldn't, a week before, they put it out that day, and I couldn't believe how many places it was. And all of a sudden, everywhere I go, all of a sudden, we saw your video, the Super Bowl video, saw the video. Like, what? I didn't know what Vayimaen is. Uh-huh. And now all of a sudden, I'm hearing about it from every different direction. And then we did many more, and each time, now I walk into a room and people won't tell me, oh, you spoke here, you spoke there, I saw this clip, this clip. Very often, the first time I'm greeted, oh, you're the guy, I loved your Vayimaen video. I'm like, how about everything else? There really seems to be that Vayimaen captured the imagination of Klal Yisrael in a very, very dramatic way.
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So like I said, the other night I was in Muncie, I walk in the door, 3 people. I loved your Vayimaen, the one about the story about the guy. You had the story of the person who didn't go to Vegas. You had people ask me, there's a Ksav Sefer that I said over in a recent Vayimaen. I got asked in so many different places, could you show it to me inside? I was like, how'd this happen? It's only a year and a half old.
Right.
I mean, I think I have a lot of reasons how it happened.
So I was going to say, what do you think, especially in light of the fact that Vayimaen is built on the topic of Shmiras Einayim, which it's expanded over the last year or so. Speakers have taken the liberty, perhaps they're exhausting the number of times you could talk about the shalshelas on the Vayimaen.
Right.
There's only so much Torah on that topic.
Okay.
And perhaps people are exhausting the verlach that they have, so they're expanding to talk about overcoming challenges in general. But what's interesting is that the main topic is Shmiras Einayim, Kedusha, topics that growing up in Flatbush, you grew up in Lakewood, New Jersey, right?
I grew up in Deal, and I went to school.
I went to Yeshiva
in Lakewood.
Now,
and the most innocent time of its
When
history.
we grew up, without asking your age, I know we may be in the same age bracket. These were topics that were not discussed when we grew up. Kedusha, Shmiras Einayim, and things like that. It was almost a taboo topic. It was something that was kept somewhat under wraps, and it was something that everyone dealt with individually. It was an individual avodah, not a public avodah. And then comes Vayimaen and brings it out into the public, and surprisingly so, there seems to be this this embrace of the topic. What do you think that is?
So, first of all, I think there's a lot of why Vayimaen is so successful, and then I'll get to the Shmir Sinai part of it specifically. As far as why Vayimaen is so successful, first of all, I think they're really careful with the speakers they choose. It's not just any guy who can talk that they take clips from. I think number two is they really make sure the content is good. Like there are times I was talking to them, I said, I made 7 clips, you put them all out? They said, no, we put only the home run ones out. So they're really careful what they do, and they produce it very well.
Right, that we know.
So it's literally a mini movie.
Right.
So here you have a movie that's obviously kosher, that's literally, there's a story, the way it's made, the way it's produced is incredible. But I think the biggest reason why it's so popular, and part of the reason why, to your question, why it's talked about so much more today, is because the struggle is humongous. And it's something that I realized by how many people came over to me about it. I said, basically, if you tell me you love my Vayimaen videos, or you love Vayimaen in general, that means you're saying, in essence, you struggle with this topic. Because if I was telling people when you're walking on the street, make sure you don't glance at the squirrel, no one was going to be saying to me, I don't know if I should say it that way, but if I was on the streets and saying, be careful, that you're careful about the trees, no one's going to say, wow, that's so inspiring. Mm-hmm. It's obviously inspiring because it's something you struggle with. Mm-hmm. And I think our generation is struggling with this more than any previous generation, and the reasons are very obvious. The reasons are because marketing and pictures have advanced in such a dramatic level. So people have screens in their home. Even the frommest homes have a screen with a computer. They have internet. They don't have internet. They have filtered internet. There's a lot of that. Then you have all the phones and everything that's on the phones. And then you have the advancement of, just how where there's a lot of from people in the workforce, which means they're tested often about what their eyes are seeing, and then at the same time you have our communities are bigger, the amount of people we're around are bigger. It just has become an incredible nisayon. Mm-hmm. So to not talk about it would really not be addressing the topic that everyone out there is struggling with. So there may have been a time when it's funny, one of the Vayimaen videos that got a lot of feedback on, which is to this point, which I think answers part of to answer your question, is that these days there's even a struggle within the frum community. That means that the guarding of your eyes is not just to guard your eyes from something inappropriate. It's even from things that are appropriate. Mm-hmm. And what's happened is that the frum community, you said I grew up around Lakewood. The frum community at that point was so pure and was so insulated. You know what I'm saying? I love telling this. I went to Lakewood Cheder when there were 2 parallel classes in the whole town of Lakewood. Just digest that. 2 parallel classes for boys in the whole town. I don't know if people know Lakewood. There's a building in Lakewood called the Legion Building. It's next to the yeshiva. Sure. That's the whole schooling.
When you went to the Cheder,
I was in the Legion Building until about 4th grade. 5th grade, we moved to the Earth.
And BMG was in one building at the time.
BMG was in one base medrash, Yashan, and that was it. And then I remember when they built Beis Elio.
Yeah, across the street. Sure.
We remember watched the whole stuff. But the town was, it went as far as Madison. I don't want to get into details of Lakewood, but it was basically went as far. Clifton was the border on one side,
right.
and maybe 2nd Street was the border on one side. There's a few people who lived over the lake. It was like a thing over the lake,
right.
And there's other people who lived 14th Street. That was the whole square. So people's life, the way people lived, the way people dressed, what people were saw around them was all very, very, very appropriate. Mm-hmm. So the Nisayan in the Machane, so to speak, was not so great. And now all of a sudden, and I'm not just picking like any town that's in the frum world and in the Jewish world, all of a sudden the horizons and the mentalities have expanded.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, even what's described as a frum family is much broader and much more colorful than it used to be. So there's nisyonot in our Machane, there's nisyonot. There's tests outside of it, and there's tests in the fact that there's screens pushed in our face in 100 different ways. So it's become a humongous challenge. And because it's become a humongous challenge, I think that's why it's taken off in a dramatic way.
And it seems that also because people are struggling with it, from my vantage point, what I see is that Vayimaen, besides for providing real-time eitzos, ways to deal with it, it was a validation. It was saying we understand your struggle.
So
that alone,
it's a great
right,
point, because I think
thing.
this is and I don't know, maybe we have to discuss it with Gedolim to see what it's supposed to be. But there was a time that it felt like that the approach to the topic almost was, you should feel guilty that you ever have a tava at all. Like the fact that you ever have a thought you should feel guilty that you have that feeling. It's very delicate to talk about this. Even as I'm talking to you about it, I'll tell you the truth, I'm uncomfortable because you want to use words. Like again, this is, to me, this is very important about this topic in general. Excuse me for putting this in parentheses, but if you're going to talk about this Altaris HaKodesh, if you're going to talk about it the right way, you have to talk about it. It has to be as non-descriptive as possible.
Absolutely.
Because if you describe something, even if every word is kosher and every description is kosher, that itself
is a breach. Is a breach. Right.
So as I'm talking to you,
sure,
I'm struggling because I'm trying to make sure that the words we're using are really coming out the right way.
It's a great point. And by the way, I've noticed that also in the Vayimaen videos. There's so much chachma in the way the messages are presented. And I want to, just to segue to the book for a second, Rabbi Yechiel Spiro did an unbelievable job on this book. I'm telling you, it is a phenomenal book. You read the book and you feel uplifted. And what he did was, he took the imagery of the videos that makes Vayimaen so interesting, and he actually captures it in the book, if that's possible. And he does it in such an edel way, such a gentle way.
Wow, so that was, before we get to the book for a second, I'm just saying this struggle that we're talking about, there used to be a feeling of like, if you ever struggle with this, you should feel bad about yourself. And now it's transitioned. I'm not sure if it's through the direction of Gedolim or just happened, but it's transitioned to, if you struggle with this, you're a regular person. It's almost like if you don't struggle with this, we have to worry. If you struggle with this, you're a regular person. But now do your best to work on it. So the feeling that maybe Vayimaen created is, this is a universal struggle. Now let's work on it. And every day having these positive, uplifting, energizing videos that are telling a person how to lift themselves out of that feeling, and how, I know you feel this way. It's okay you feel this way, but now don't. I think that has resonated tremendously with Klal Yisrael. Now getting to Rabbi Spiro. So first of all, I just want to tell you, Rabbi Spiro is a beautiful person. We've interacted a number of times, and we've become very friendly. In fact, he's spoken a couple of times on our behalf and different things we've done, and he's just wonderful. He's humble. He'll send beautiful comments. Sometimes I'll hear a speech of mine, he'll send a comment. I loved it. I love how you said it. And I'm like, you're kind of Yechiel Spiro. Like, you don't need to bow. It's just, there's something very beautiful about his demeanor and his way, and his humility, and the way he does things is really phenomenal. That being said, yes, his way to write, and the truth is, I don't know if I should admit this, but some of the books that I love to read, that in my first speeches I used to incorporate, were his books. Touched by a Story 1, Touched by a Story 2. If you come in my house, you'll see half the pages folded. Those are the ones that I would like to tell over. By the way, your stories also I love telling over, Rabbi.
Thank you.
So, but he really does a phenomenal job, and he really picks fantastic stories, and his way of writing really brings it out in a beautiful way.
Sure.
So having him be the person to do this, I think even adds another level of strength and legitimacy to it. And the way he writes in a beautiful way. He always does. Yeah. I once asked him, like, how you put out so many books so fast? Right. I don't know what he has his ways and how he does it, but he does it. He gets it done really unbelievably. Maybe it helps living in Baltimore. We don't
maybe
live
that's
in
what
the chaos of New York. I don't know. Maybe there's parking where he lives. And
I hear you.
But he really does.
He's a great talent, and I'll echo your sentiment. He's one of the most talented people I know, and that's not even his biggest mila.
I hear you. Yes, no,
he's a gem of a person.
So, yeah, he's Baruch Hashem.
And he was the right person for this.
Yes.
For this project for sure. Now we're talking about these struggles. You're someone who speaks to many audiences. Men, women, boys, girls, and so much of what you speak about is tapping into that inner neshama, the strength to overcome. What is the message that you typically give over when you want to talk about whether it's ruchnius challenges, whether it's peer pressure? What ultimately is that home run message that you find resonates with your audience?
So the first thing is you have to come from an up place, not from a down place. Not like don't see something inappropriate because you're bad if you do so. Not that like we're always wrong and always. And there were times in Klal Yisrael that maybe that was the message. I don't think it is now. I think now the Klal Yisrael is struggling a lot mentally too. The pressure on people is intense. Like the average person has a lot of emotional struggle. Raising children is harder than anyone imagine. Having the real shalom bayit, the way you really envision it, is harder than anyone imagine. The cost of living is just not even fair, and it's ridiculous. So now you're starting off, every person wakes up in the morning. So many people in our people today, living beautiful lives, wake up in a cold sweat. And they start to think about their day, and they get this bill, this challenge, this kid, this school. There's a lot that's going on. Mm-hmm. So people have to be lifted up. That's what they need, and those are the messages that are resonating across Klal Yisrael right now the most. You know what I'm saying? Rabbi Biderman is lifting people up.
Mm-hmm.
You know
and it's always with that positive
always
message.
Somehow lifting people up. So I think that's the A. The A is that it has to come from something that makes you feel excited, not something that makes you feel beat down. A message, now when it comes to Vayimaen, on a personal level, what I like to talk about a lot is that I really think that when a person is not careful about Kedusha and is not careful about where their eyes wander, I think those people are much more frustrated. So I think you have this added advantage, and that's not the reason why we do it. The reason why a person has to be shomer einayim is because Hashem said you have to be shomer einayim. Mm-hmm. A lot of times when we make things comfortable and we sell it to you, it's almost like you should listen because of the sales pitch. You're not listening because of the sales pitch. You're listening because Hashem said to do so. But the sales pitch, I think, happens to be fairly easy on this one. Because people that eyes are all over the place, those people are not happy people. That's obviously going to just make you more frustrated. The concept of being jealous, let's say we talked about just your eyes wandering to seeing what other people's cars and other people's homes. Most people don't get happy seeing someone else's house being bigger than theirs. Mm-hmm. So the same thing is true with Shmirat Einayim. Seeing things that you don't have is not helping you, it's not making you happier. So the easy sell on this is the more self-control you use, the more you're able to say no, the more happiness and beracha you're bringing into your life right away, easily, directly, that minute. Mm-hmm. So first it has to be uplifting, and secondly it has to be something where you realize you're going to be happier. Again, the challenge of this is that we've been able, I think a lot of speakers today have been able to sell a Torah lifestyle so nicely that it becomes more about the sales pitch than it does. Like for example, and this is not about Vayimaen, but it's a good example. There's so many stories out there about the person davened and they got saved. I hate those stories. Mm-hmm. Because really Hashem decides if you're going to get saved or not. I'm not saying I've never said those stories, but I try to avoid those stories at all costs. Because it makes people feel like that's how it works. So I understand you're trying to sell davening, and you're trying to sell tefillah. So the way you sell tefillah is you say, we know this guy, the doctors went in, they checked his heart, he had a disease all over, they couldn't even do surgery, and then they said Tehillim, and they opened up the side again, it was gone forever, and he lived happily ever after. Wonderful story, they're easy to tell, they're fun to tell, and they do inspire people to daven until someone davens and it doesn't work. And they daven for someone and the person didn't live. And now all of a sudden they come back, and again I work a lot with the Syrian, with modern part of the Jewish world, and also a lot with the front part of the Jewish world, but the modern part of the Jewish world struggles with this. I davened, it didn't work. The answer is whoever told you that's the equation. You daven because Hashem told you to daven. You daven because you connect to Hashem. You daven because you're a servant of Hashem. You daven because that's avodah. That is our way to serve and connect. That's our way that we build ourselves and we build our emunah and our strength. That's why you daven, not because of results. So the same thing is true here. Shmirat Einayim is our obligation. I don't care whether you like it or not. I don't care whether life is happier by closing your eyes or not. It's our obligation. But it also happens to be that people that are shomer de'enayim, it's so much easier to be focused. It's so much easier to be happy.
And they feel
liberated. I think that becomes a powerful message.
And the Vayimaen message is also beyond the Shmiras Einayim and Kedusha component.
Right.
Is also, as many of the speakers have alluded to, is tapping into what we were talking about before, the inner strength and fortitude to say no to different things. It might be materialistic. It might be different types of peer pressure. It's really building strength to do what I want to do, not to be forced by outside forces.
Right. So that, I think, is a message that I personally love. And I've said this a lot of time in speeches. I'll share it again here. Anytime I get an excuse to share it, I like sharing it. And that is, I was once struggling. Like, I'm trying to teach my children, and I'm trying to teach them, like, how we want to be mechanech our kids. And now you find the kids saying, but that family does it that way, and that family does it that way.
Right.
So sometimes I say, well, we're more yeshivish than them. And then, oh, but that family doesn't do it. Oh, but we're more normal than them. So I keep going back and forth from, like, so I have to knock everybody in order to make my kids agree with our mahalach. And then I had a thought, and it was a random place. We were in Philadelphia. We were going on a trip. We were going to take a horse and buggy ride. We were sitting outside the horse and buggy, and we were on some table or something, and the kids were waiting. They had a half-hour wait. I said, guys, I want to tell you something. So my kids were all sitting at the table. I said, there's such a thing in the world as a brand. Ferragamo is a brand. Nike is a brand. Disney is a brand. Coca-Cola is a brand. Gucci is a brand. Toyota is a brand. There's brands. Each brand has a very distinct style. And everyone within that brand understands the style. So everyone in Coke understands the kind of products that would be under the Coke heading. Everyone at Disney understands what fits with Disney. This cartoon fits with Disney. That is not a Disney type. Everyone knows, you go to Disney theme parks, I think they're made in the way that everything is all Disney. Gucci, there's certain leathers that they'll use. The other leathers, you don't bring it into Gucci because that's our way. I said, families also are a brand. Each family has a brand. And they have a style, and they're known for certain things, and they're good at certain things, and they have certain strengths. And it doesn't mean that family is better than another family. It means this is what they're known for. I said, our Habers, we're a brand based on our grandparents, based on my grandparents, based on my parents, based on myself, based on mommy and us, based on your aunts and uncles. We have a certain style. And we're most conditioned for that style. So when people see you, they see that style. It doesn't mean that our style is better than others. It just means this is ours. And this is our unique blend that we could serve Hashem with in a very, hopefully beautiful way. And like a light bulb went on in their head. It was like they got it. And I don't have to knock anything else. And it doesn't mean you can't get a lot from everything. Of course, you're getting a lot from all Rosh Hashivas, other families, and other things that you can learn from. Right. But ultimately, it fits into our way. And every one of my kids, I got to get there with my youngest, but my younger ones. But every one of my older kids that they get our style. They bought in. And it's easy. I don't have to sell it to them. I don't have to feel like I have to convince them what we do. And our family is a certain unique way. In a certain way, we are very yeshivish. In a certain way, we have a very normal side. Not every family has that blend. But we have that blend, and my kids are very comfortable with that blend.
But you're saying really every family on their level could
family
teach their
can
kids
create that
we're a brand, and you should be proud of what we stand for.
And once you're proud of the brand, it's easy to say no to other things. And every family has to have that. Now, and I think most families could. Now,
but can I ask you a technical question? If my father is Rabbi Joey Haber, and he's fairly well known, and he's an eloquent speaker, and he's out there, and he's making a difference. So if I'm your child, it's I like the brand. It's a pretty good brand. But not every family is high profile. Not every family has parents who are prominent or even successful at different levels. How would you inculcate that pride in a run-of-the-mill family where they don't have that cachet?
Okay, I appreciate the compliment. You made me uncomfortable a little. I'm not sure what to say, but I appreciate what you're saying that. But I would say is this: every family has a success. And every family has something. And if you want your kids to buy in, you have to have some success. It could be the father is very good at chesed. It could be the father is very helpful in the shul. It could be the mother is very involved in certain things in the community. If you want your children to look up to you, they have to see a little bit of validation of what you are. Mm-hmm. And at some point, again, it doesn't have to be something that shatters the world, but it has to be something that there is a reason. And if you find as a little success, like I said, maybe you have guests come to your house a lot, so you're successful at bringing guests over. Mm-hmm. You're successful at being very fun people. There's some area of success. Kids want to follow success. There's some area of success that has to come out. And again, the definition of success could be very different. You could be a good Shalom Meshav second Seder that does a wonderful job and the Bachrim love you and you really lift up those Bachrim very much. That's success.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? And you could be a person who works in a store and the people that come and you make a simple salary, but everyone loves coming to the store because you greet them wonderfully. That's also success. Mm-hmm. Sure. So maybe this is a little shalol lishma. Maybe it should be that you shouldn't need success in order to follow your parents. That's true. But advice to parents would be is that ultimately, if you want your children to follow you, some kind of success is critical.
I want to tell you, I love the concept. I think from a chinuch standpoint, it's vital. It's interesting that people don't really talk about it. This nekuda, I've thought about it a lot. I never thought of it as a brand. I always thought about instilling in your children pride to be who they are, and it filters down from the parents. But I love how you're framing it as a brand. You're a brand, every family is a brand, and it takes effort and time to cultivate that.
Now, you also have to validate the kids within the brand.
Right.
If you're successful, but the kids have no connection.
Or different interests.
Then they're not interested. I'll give you, I'm pretty open, I'll give you a scary conversation that happened last night. My youngest son's teacher calls up. She couldn't get my wife on. She calls me. I don't know why I answered. I answered. She says, Rabbi, Haber, can I speak to you? I said, I'm actually busy. I'm going to a meeting right now. Can you call me? She says, I really want to tell you something. I said, okay, I'll call you later. I said, my wife will call you back. My wife called the teacher back. Teacher says, by the way, my wife tells me, by the way, you know what the teacher said? I said, what the teacher said? Teacher said that our son says that my father doesn't have any time for me ever. And my father's very busy. And my father speaks all over, and he never has any time for me. So I was like, oh, wow. I'm the guy who talks about spending time with your children and all that stuff. So, and sure enough, my wife is telling this, I'm leaving the house to go make a speech somewhere in Kew Garden Hills and come back. And I'm like, So, first of all, that night, right when I came home, my son likes to see me. He likes to know that I'm home for the night, which I'm often not. So right away, he could tell if I'm home for the night. I'll put on something relaxed so I right away went to my room, put on something, looked calm, and I called him to my room. I said, Moshe, come in here. He says down. I said, you want to talk to me more? He says, yeah. I said, you realize that we're very close? He says, yeah. I said, in all likelihood, we're closer than most fathers and sons in your class. Just want to be clear. He says, oh, I know. I said, you realize that for 5 years I put you to sleep almost every night, telling you the story of David HaMelech. We went through the whole Shemuel, the whole Melachim, the half of Yehoshua, and the whole Shoftim together. Like, let's just relax on the, I said, but I know what happened. There was a winter vacation for the Syrian community, and I didn't go away. So every night I stayed home with him, and we spent time together. I said, I know you want to know that you have time with me. So let's schedule a time. I said, Thursday night, 9th. He says, oh, you're going to give me in a month from now. So he's liking the manipulation because he knows it's my weak point. So here's my weak point to make me feel like I'm not a great father. So I said to him, no. Thursday, this is Tuesday night. I said, Thursday night from 9:30, B'ezrat Hashem, 9:30, we're going to sit down, we spend time. We'll play a game, we'll spend time. I said, is that good? I said, and then on Thursday night, we're going to schedule another time. So he walked out, he felt great. But that's a big component too. The kids need to feel like you're in tune to them. And this is a whole nother topic. It's a whole chinuch thing we could get into. But it requires some success. It requires a standard. And it requires also you very much validating them and their feelings and their struggles and giving them the time that they need. So I appreciate the teacher's call because she's kind of got me moving. I don't think it's as bad as it sounded. Like it's if I said, oh, we sound like that whole horror story. The father, he's so busy. It turns out his own son. Like, it sounds like a great story. But I think that to get back to Vayimaen, I think that really is where it boils down to. Every family in Am Yisrael needs to be proud of what it means to be part of this family. It's the stories of our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our Zaydis, our Babis, our Elta Zaydis. It's the stories of ourselves and our own accomplishments. It's the pride and the beauty of being in this home. There has to be joy in the house. There has to be happiness in the house. There has to be, if I could use the word, fun in the house. This has to be an uplifting place. Once you're uplifted and you're energized and you believe in what it means to be you, then all the restrictions that are required are easy to do. So if you go to the former Queen of England and you said that there are guidelines, and this is something I said once in a speech that I also got a ton of feedback. It's just a regular speech that went around. And I said, there's guidelines of what's allowed in the Queen's wardrobe. I'm sure it's annoying, but it's never difficult. Because at the end of the day, if that's what it takes to be the Queen, I'm in. So the same thing is true with us. That if we believe in our brand, and more importantly, if we believe in our royalty, and our relationship with Hashem, and we're proud of it, then it becomes not so difficult to say no to the things that help make us us. And that's the concept of Vayimaen. The concept of Vayimaen is you could say no to that because you're not saying no to something. You're really saying yes to something much better. So to say no to something that just no is very frustrating. And yes, for a bacher, when you're 20 years old, right now it's just no. It's not like because of that you're more focused in your home and your family. That didn't start yet. So right now it's very difficult. But ultimately, the no is going to lead to a much more powerful yes. It's going to lead to a focus in your home and a belief and a trust within your marriage and within your family. That's incredible. So when you're excited about what you're doing and you're excited about where it's taking you, I think that enables you, the work that it takes to get there and the restrictions and the discipline that it takes to get there becomes a lot easier.
On a totally different topic, I'm going to treat myself now. I want to ask you, I'm very intrigued. It's not every day I get to have you sitting here. But as
you say that to every guy that sits here?
No, I don't. Okay. I don't. Every guest is special in their own way.
Thank you. I don't want to get in trouble. I appreciate it.
I don't want to get in trouble. You're going to get me in trouble with some people. All the guests have been great in their own way.
I know.
They each bring something special to the table. But I want to ask you to 3 or 4 questions. You can answer them together, but I'm really intrigued to hear what you have to say. Even if the camera was off, I would want to ask you this. Number 1, who's a speaker or speakers who, growing up, who you looked up to and you wanted to emulate in terms of the way they were able to empower people and inspire people, number 1. Number 2, what do you think makes a good speech? Number 3, how long do you prepare for a speech, and can you use the same speech multiple times? And number 4, just a side thing, you're speaking to many different audiences, both Ashkenazi and Sephardi, but you yourself are Sephardi, so I'm curious how you decide when you use what pronunciation and how you don't get confused, because you seem to do it so smoothly.
Wow, that was a ton. Okay, go one at a time. Not the first one first. I have to think about that one because I never fully do it. Okay. Go one at a time. Go.
What makes a good speech? Is it the content, delivery, stories, beginning and end? What's the secret?
Okay, so there's a ton of things to it. First thing that makes a good speech is being incredibly in tune to what the crowd is looking for. You need to think. I start off preparing every speech. No one wants to hear a word Joey Haber has to say. That's my intro in my head. No one wants to hear me. Just because I'm standing here doesn't mean they want to hear me. Now I know they don't want to hear me. What do I know they want to hear about? What are they thinking about? What do they care about? What's on their mind? So the goal, this first step is no matter which audience you're in, what's in their head. Every single time I make a speech, no matter where it is, I'll talk to the people involved and I'll ask them 1,000 questions. And a lot of times if there's a lot of speeches in a week, I'll make sure to ask those people close enough to the speech so I could remember and get into their head. What's the background? What's the kind of people? How many people are going to be there? What's the setting? What are they thinking about? How from are they? What's their dynamic? How religious are the men and women? Are they? Where do they send their kids to school? A million questions to sort of feel like what it feels like to be them. So the most important component of a speech is being in tune to what the crowd is thinking about. That's the aleph. Bet is, you can never talk down to a crowd. The crowd always has to feel like you respect them and you believe in them. So if a crowd ever feels like you're a little dismissive of anything about them, you could rebuke. And a lot of times the speeches can be very direct, but it comes in a way that the crowd feels lifted up. Now at the same time also, you want to make it interesting. Now, a lot of people think stories are interesting and Divrei Torah are not. The truth is, today, it's not even so true. Because everyone's heard a million stories. A good vart, hits you. So, you can't always get a good vart. Because sometimes the emet is not the best, most ringing, perfectly placed vart. It's just, the emet sometimes, not every Rashi is under the category of a sweet, easy vart to hear. So, but when you can, a good vart, you want to be interesting throughout. So even when you're not telling a story, it should feel somewhat like a story. So it should feel like there's something that's taking place, which leads to another component, is that anytime you're using an analogy or a mashal or anything like that, if you could put it in a story form, it's much better. So if you say, the man went to the store. Let's say the man went to the store. I'm already done. I fell asleep. But if you say, yesterday when I went to Walgreens, that's all of a sudden it's more intriguing. It's like, okay, what happened?
Right.
So and then another thing that I use, I think more than, I would say this became my thing, is I use a lot of personal stories. And the personal stories that I use often don't make me look good. And it's funny, you said just like the story just now. I told you that the teacher called up and said, that my son just told a few teachers in the school that I never get my father's time. That did not make me look good. But you know what it also did? Is half the people that are listening to this are saying, oh wow, because I had a similar experience. Either the teacher called or the teacher didn't call, but I sort of feel that way. Like my son feels like I'm not paying attention, or my daughter feels like So all of a sudden, they feel like, 1 second, he knows my life. So saying vulnerable stories, for some reason, for a lot of people, it's hard to do. I don't find it hard to do because I've seen how much it's resonated. And I remember the first time I told the personal story, it wasn't even the best story. But the crowd reacted in a unique way. And I think when you tell those stories, now again, someone once said to me, it's similar to the whole idea of the brand. You can't tell a story that makes you look bad and now everyone thinks of you as bad. You're talking about an audience that came to hear me or turned it on in their car to hear me. So they obviously think I have some level of competence. So now to make myself vulnerable comes off as cute. Whereas if I just make myself look like a schlub, then that's not vulnerable. That's just nebuch.
So there's a balance.
So there's a balance of that. So I gave you a bunch of components of, I think, of what makes it. Obviously, good stories always resonate. We love a good story. But I think a lot of those things are what resonates and makes.
And how about delivery? What part of a delivery talks to you? That is it someone's vocabulary? Is it their energy? Is it their passion?
So
what do you think it is?
I think all of those things work. I think sometimes I wish I had a better vocabulary. It's funny. My brother speaks. My brother Rabbi David, he's actually done a few Vayimaen. He has a great vocabulary. I sometimes I wish I had a better vocabulary, but I do think it helps. Now, you could also get to where your vocabulary is too high.
Too much.
And it's like, okay, he's Mr. Perfect. I got it. I'll see you later. So a little bit, the realness of it is important. But the high vocabulary, I think, helps. I think a strong delivery that expresses the emotion of the speech. So at times you're sad, it should feel sad. At times you're happy, it should feel happy. At times you're driving home a point that should feel like it's driven home. At times you got to go slow. At times you have to go fast. So balancing all of that, but it's really expressing the emotion as it's happening that I think becomes powerful in terms of a delivery.
Now, I asked you about preparation. How much time do you prepare?
Way more than anyone imagines.
Really?
My first speeches were about, I was still learning in Lakewood, and it was maybe 22, 23 years ago. I used to give a shiur to 4 people around the table. I prepared 10 hours. 4 people, 45 minutes. And the preparation, and at that time, I would say that was the best decision I ever made in my life. Maybe my wife, but I'm saying that was one of the best decisions I ever made, because you have to prepare well. Now, at this point, are there times that I wing it? There are times that I wing it. Mm-hmm. But everything that is, like, if I'm creating an original speech, I try to put in a ton of time.
Let's say you addressed a huge audience of women and girls in the Kaddish event. It was an arena, literally an arena of women and girls. How much time did you spend on that?
Okay, so the whole thing of that was a nace. I could tell you the story ongoing. But long story short, they didn't call me to come and do it until a week before. Mm-hmm. That means I am right now booked for speeches in June.
Really?
May, June, not saying the whole schedule. There's some people that will still call now for February.
And now for those watching this, it's now the early February.
Right. I'm saying, but the point is, and you could have, there'll be other people that will call 2-3 weeks in advance. But the Kaddish called on a Tuesday night. It was going to be, the event was going to be the next Wednesday night. And they basically were saying that they wanted, like a little bit of, like, I guess they wanted to make sure that it wasn't only yeshiva, so a little bit of but you were acceptable, have a flip on. I don't know why and they said, okay, we want to see. So good. So now I all of a sudden got super focused on it, like nothing else in the world was on my mind. And now I'm thinking about it. I prepared a speech. Sunday morning, I called them up. They said, we want to hear your speech. Sunday morning, I called them up. I was actually driving to Lakewood because I had moved to deal for the summer. I was driving to Lakewood. I like to learn a BMG when I have a chance in the summer. So I was driving to Lakewood on Sunday morning, and they called me up and let me hear the speech. I told them over the whole speech. They said, everyone knows that already. They nixed the whole thing. So now it's Sunday morning. The speech is Wednesday night. I've never in person spoken to 25,000 people before in my life. And 20,000 of them at that time, maybe 23,000 of them never heard of me before. I was saying, like, why is someone named Joey on this flyer, an event? Like, it was, like, really. And then the Abisha just made miracles. Like, all of a sudden, Nisim started to happen. I got to BMG. I bumped it. I saw some kid I never knew. I came late because it was after shiur. Big deal. My son all of a sudden shows up because he's learning in Lakewood. I said, what are you doing here? You don't learn this basement. I should learn the other one. He said, no, my friend bumped into you. I said, how'd he bump into me? How'd he even see me? I saw one guy. He said, yeah, he saw someone holding a Ben Ish Chai. He figured it was you. No one brings a Ben Ish Chai into Lakewood Yeshiva. Mm-hmm. I never in my life brought a Ben Ish Chai. For some reason, that Sunday I did. My son says, by the way, Dad, you're speaking in the Kaddish in 3 days. Like, what are you going to say? I said, the truth is they just nixed it on my drive here. He says, why don't you say the speech with the king and the speech with the story with the king and the story with the eagle? I was like, whoa, that's great. I'm going to do that. These are stories I've said before. That day, right after I was davening mincha in yeshiva, I thought of a thing of like, long story short, I was consumed with the speech the entire week. Mm-hmm. I got a lot of feedback. And again, I went to BMG again the Tuesday before to ask people, do you have technology in the house? Do you not? I wanted to feel what the audience is going with and see the confusion that the audience is. Like, what are they thinking? I'm in Brooklyn all year. I'm not in Lakewood all year. Majority of the audience was from Lakewood. So I need to feel what they were thinking. And then I had a brother who's a little associated with, his name is Rabbi Yaakov. He's a little associated with the tag and all that stuff. He called me as I'm in the arena. And he says, Joey, what are you going to say? I said, I prepared the speech already. I said, you know what? I said, out of respect to him, he's my younger brother, but out of respect to him, let me share with him the speech. I shared, he tweaked 10 things. He said, don't say that line, do say that line.
Really?
Minus that, don't say that story, not strong. Keep in that story. And I got up on the stage, and the Abisha took care of the whole thing. And they called me that morning. They said, by the way, just for you to know, we did a Hasidic event the night before. There's only going to be 1,000 people there when you speak. I said, what, you got me here, all the way here, this and that, and there's going to be 1,000 people. They said, by the time you're done, it'll be full. Mm-hmm. So I called my brother. I said, what should we do? This brother was in Lakewood. I said, what should we do? He said, listen, if Hashem got you here, he'll get you there. What Hashem do? I didn't call them back. I didn't worry. stood on the stage. The place was 95% full. And all of the hookups from all around the world were all hooked in at that time. And everyone was like excited to see like, what's this event going to be and what's the Chiddush? So it became a speech that so many more people heard than if I would have been at the end. Because at the end, people were getting tired of the topic a little more and like that. So Hashem runs the world. I will tell you this, every single speech I've ever given is a nes nigla. That means Hashem has to send me a story of art, a thing like I don't know where it came from every single time. I'm not exaggerating, but it requires a ton of preparation, a ton of preparation, and that all goes back to the respect of the audience. The audience is here to hear you. They don't want to hear you just ramble, even though I just did. They want to hear you prepared, and they want to hear and feel like you prepared for them. They can tell when you're prepared, and it gets them up to listen.
So just before we wrap up the conversation, the two other things I asked you, the pronunciation Ashkenaz Sfardi.
Okay, and who's okay?
And
so
then I was just curious if you can't think of. I know I put you on the spot.
No, it's okay.
If there's anyone who you emulate as someone who's able to connect to an audience.
Okay, so I'll answer both. First of all, the Ashkenaz Sfardi. My background is very, very, very Syrian. My parents are Syrian. I was raised in a Syrian house my entire life. I prayed in Syrian shuls my entire life. Very Syrian. And my background is also very, very Ashkenaz yeshivish. That means I went to Lakewood Cheder when I was from 5 years old. And then after 10 grades in Lakewood Cheder from preschool to 9 grades, I went to the Staten Island Yeshiva for 7 years. I learned in Brisk in Eretz Yisrael. Then I learned in BMG for 10 years. So I've heard thousands of shiurim in Yiddish. So, like I said, my background is fully Ashkenazi Jews and fully Syrian.
Wow.
So I feel very, very
comfortable in both.
And the truth is, this is where it's tricky. To speak to a Syrian audience, I couldn't even possibly speak Ashkenaz. Like it only comes out of my guts, Syrian. To speak to an Ashkenaz audience, it feels like I'm faking if I speak Sephardi. So if I say the Pasuk says in the Gemara to a Lakewood crowd, I'm like, who am I fooling? So it naturally goes to a Lakewood crowd in a yeshivish way, and it naturally goes to a Syrian crowd in a Syrian way.
I would say that's a talent to be able to do that, and you're saying it almost comes second nature.
So if I were to say, who were the speakers that helped mold me? I would first start with my father. My father was a wonderful speaker. He's not so well now, but he was a wonderful speaker. And people in the Syrian community used to love to hear him. But I would say my father had a lot more dignity in his speech than what I get. And I guess, and I'm a sort of a combination of my father and my mother. That my father is very, very respectful and aristocratic. And my mother is very dynamic and real. So I think the combination of the two is inside me. So they had a big impact. My Rabbi in yeshiva had a big impact, not necessarily in the speaking style, but Rabbi Feinstein was my Rosh Yeshiva, so he's very practical. Rabbi Gershon Weiss was my manal, is very practical. I grew up pretty close to Rabbi Diamond in Deal, and he's very he resonates, his things really hit you in a beautiful way. And then when I got married, and I lived in Deal or Lake, whatever, my in-laws lived in Brooklyn. So sometimes I would go to Rabbi Eli Mansor's speech. He was a few years older than me. And I was because I had no real place in Brooklyn, because I really grew up in Jersey. So I would go in and sneak into speech. And maybe I went to 7 or 8 of them as a kid. But there was a bunch of things that he did. I said, wow, the way he did 45 minutes on one topic, the way he really sort of lifted up the crowd and resonated with the crowd, was funny and serious at the same time. Some of those things, bringing Torah content in a very interesting way, all of that registered in my head in a really strong way. I said, wow, that's interesting to be able to do that. And when I first started speaking, people would be like, oh, he's the next, again, Rabbi Mansour is older than me. Oh, he's the next Rabbi Mansour. In a certain community, I would get that comment a lot. But now I think we have very unique styles. But I would say those people together contributed to getting there.
That's really great.
So I might have talked too much.
No.
But I appreciated the conversation.
I loved your insights. This was a great conversation.
No, thank you very much.
Keep doing what you do. We love your drushes. We love your shiurim. We love your speeches. I hope that you'll be on Vayimaen again.
No,
Mitzvah
we're
Hashem.
hoping to be.
Many more times, and we're excited again for this book, which is bringing the video messages and the written word that so many people are going to appreciate it. And I should mention that besides for the fact that it's based on what the speaker said on Vayimaen, Rabbi Spiro, in his own tremendously creative way, added in a lot of his own. So this is a new creation, but it's just a continuation of the heroic, courageous people behind Vayimaen who choose to be anonymous, incredibly.
First of all, they're unbelievable. If you know how humble they are, like I don't think they realize how much of impact they're making on Klal Yisrael. And I think that this is another step in that battle that we as a nation are waging against what you would say is the marketing technology, inundation of images that are being thrown in people's faces all the time. And it's an ongoing battle. And you could sort of succeed on Tuesday and fail on Wednesday.
Right.
And you could feel very strong for a year and then all of a sudden feel very weak because of maybe other things that are happening in a person's life. So the ongoing battle, the video, and now combine that with the book, I think enables people to give people strength. And whether it's a young bacher in yeshiva or not in yeshiva who struggles, whether he's in yeshiva or he's in the workforce and he's struggling and he wants to live al Tarat HaKodesh, or if it's an older married man, and whether he's from, not as from, but he's like, struggles with these things. The message today is you're a healthy person if you have a struggle. But your job now is, okay, Mazel Tov, we validated you. You feel good about yourself, you're healthy, good. Now, turn away. Because that's how you're going to stay healthy. And that's how you're going to become a strong person. And that's our job. We serve Hashem. We different generations had different tests. We don't live in ghettos. We don't have the kind of epic poverty that they might have had. We don't have the oppression that they might have had 100 years ago. Our test today is sort of the test of luxury. And that is that everything around us looks fantastic. And our job is to put the blinders on and say, I'm focusing on my life. I'm focusing on my home. I'm focusing on what I'm building. And I'm not distracted by it all. And I'm not jealous of it all. And I'm not frustrated by it all. And I'm not down by what looks like is out there. I know my life. I'm proud of it. I'm excited about it. I'm living it. So Hashem's test today, it used to be a test of negativity. And today our test is almost a test of positivity. Where our test is, it seems like there's so much out there. You feel like everyone's got something that you don't. Lift yourself up. Be proud of what you have. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of the fact that we're a part of Am Yisrael, and have the courage and the strength the next time you're tempted to be able to be Vayimaen, to turn away and say, I'm objecting, and Hashem is going to take care of giving me an incredible life.
As always, thank you for that message of positivity and strength, and
thank you.
Continued Hatzlacha.
Thank you very much. Thank you.